Hello, my name is BJ Perez. Welcome to Tapping Into His Treasures. How is everybody doing? Get situated here. Our theme today is brokenness. Broken people, broken men and women, broken hearts, broken dreams. How many times has your heart been broken? Certainly you've had at least one broken relationship. Generally, people have multiple broken relationships. These broken relationships are extremely painful. We can be consumed, absolutely consumed, with rejection, with loneliness and despair. If you're anything like I was in the past, you can be, when you're going through this, you can be talking to one person or to a group of people, and you can hear the words they're speaking, but you have no idea what the content of the words is, because your mind is like a million miles away. Would you agree? The heartache overtakes your entire being. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? There's a host of other reasons besides broken relationships that can cause a broken heart, including the death of a loved one, especially a premature death of a loved one, or a death of a friend or an acquaintance. And there are broken dreams. How many times have you had broken dreams? Maybe you dreamed of taking a trip around the world, or to Europe, or to an island. And your plans fell through because someone in your family got sick, and you had to use the money you had put away toward a trip, toward medical expenses instead. Or maybe you waited until your kids were grown up, they were teenagers or in college. You got caught up on your bills and were excited about purchasing a new car, a boat, or a camper, and you find out that you're pregnant. Well, talk about devastation. That would do it. But it happens. Your dreams are broken. Maybe you're like I was. Maybe you're a younger person. Maybe you're a teenager. And you're in high school. And like myself, I was in hopes of graduation. Had gone through my junior year, was in hopes of graduation and pursuing a medical career. But you find yourself pregnant. And all your hopes and dreams and aspirations are shattered. All your friends are going to the prom and school picnics, class trips, and all that stuff, and you're home changing baby diapers. So there's so many different scenarios. You get the message. Maybe you know what it's like to have a broken spirit. When your spirit is broken, you sink as low as one can possibly sink. When you experience a broken spirit, it is more like having your heart and soul hit with one of those kingpin bowling balls. You know, the big ones with the 3 holes, one for your thumb and the other 2 fingers. It's as if one of those balls comes hurling at you and smacks you right in the heart and pierces your soul. That's no exaggeration. And that is compared to, or opposed to, a broken heart of broken dreams. That is more like having one of the smaller bowling balls, like the candle pin, I think they call them the candle pin balls, and they look sort of like a melon, about that big. And that comes at your heart and soul also, but when you have a broken spirit, it's deeper. Only God could heal a broken spirit. Many people experience wounded spirits. It tells us in Proverbs 18, listen to what Proverbs 18:14 says. 18:14. The strong spirit of a man sustains him in bodily pain or trouble, but a weak and broken spirit, who can bear it? Who can bear it? Only with God's help can we bear it. God has been telling me all week that He sometimes has to allow a person to become broken in order to mold that person to His image. Meditate on this, would you? In your heart of hearts, you know, as well as I do, that it is the only way to grow strong and to identify with people, by being broken sometime in your life. When I go through brokenness, the grief is so bad that I want to die. And the only thing that keeps me sane is to tell God that I choose to glorify Him rather than to give into my grief, because it would be so much easier to stop functioning as a person. And I remember once when I thought one of my relatives shot himself, and I heard the gunshot and everything, and I could have screamed hysterically, or I could have put God ahead of even that, which may sound harsh if you don't have a trained ear and a spiritual ear. But I remember falling down on the floor and saying, my God, if this has actually happened, and there's a dead body outside, I say to you that I will not stop functioning as a soul winner and as a disciple of Jesus Christ. I will go on with you. No matter how bad the heartache and the pain, I choose to go on with you. And praise the Lord, nobody was dead. The gunshot that I heard was the shot coming from the gun of a duck hunter. But it was a scary situation. And I don't regret having had that opportunity to put God first before the devil. So that is what I mean when I say to choose God over the circumstances and put Him first, even when it'd be easier to go the other route. Well, I wasn't planning to say that, to tell you that, so I'm a little lost here. Okay, I realize that God doesn't want us to simply exist and to eat and sleep mechanically, so I always ask Him for His strength to take a baby step forward, and then I pray for more strength to take the second and the third steps forward. It's all Him when it's talking about brokenness. It would be so much easier to give into the despair, to go to bed, and to throw the covers over our heads and not to function. Yet, our love for God should overpower our grief and our heartbreak. I even remember, oh wait a minute, so I forced myself to keep from falling off that cliff, and you can do the same thing. I could count the times in my life that I have had to scrape myself off the floor and go through this process. I couldn't have done it without His help. He kept reminding me of how much He loved me, and He will keep reminding you of how much He loves you, because He's a loving and caring Father. And it also brought to my mind somebody that I knew, I don't know, 30 years ago or so, maybe even longer. And his wife died at a fairly young age of cancer. And he had 5 kids. The 2 youngest were twins. And it was awful hard on him. Our hearts just ached for him. And he did say, it would be so much easier to just give into it and fall apart. But holding it together for the kids' sake was the hard way to go. And I know what he meant. Now, some cases of brokenness are different than others. Some people actually make known to others that they cannot forgive God for taking away their loved ones. I recently heard someone say that, and that caused me to delve into this subject even more. Here is something I came up with from a well-known preacher from a long time ago. I just took a 1-paragraph excerpt from one of his writings, which we usually don't do, but I just thought that it was so profound that I wanted to share it with you. Here is that little excerpt. He was speaking. There was a mother who had been wearing black for years after her child had been taken away. She had never forgiven God for what He had done. Now, this is the preacher talking. They spoke differently 100 years ago than they do now, so bear with me. Now, this is an evil that is to be rebuked. I dare not comfort those whose spirits are wounded in this fashion. If they carry even their mourning too far, we must say to them, dear friend, is not this rebellion against God? May not this be petulance instead of patience? May there not be very much here which is not at all according to the mind of Christ? We may sorrow and be grieved when we lose our loved ones, for we are men. But we must moderate our sorrow and bow our will to the will of the Lord, for are we not also men of God? It was hard to get through that because of the way they talked back then. But this may seem harsh, but it's not. It is the mind of Christ being revealed. The book of Isaiah, in chapter 57, I think it's verses 1 and 2, tells that God sometimes takes people home early to spare them worse things that would come in their future. So ultimately, God takes people home to spare them a terrible future, sometimes. Yet, family members of the deceased can't forgive God, even though he is just being merciful to a loved one. And you've heard me say before that I've lost my beautiful 23-year-old grandson. So please don't say or tell me that I don't understand, because I do understand. I'm just saying that as Christians, we do not have the right to be unforgiving of God. There is nothing to forgive. That doesn't even make sense, that you can't forgive God. Think about it. Some have a wounded spirit through unkindness of men or cruelty of men or women, through the unkindness of children, little children, adult children, because of the ingratitude of people whom they've laid down their lives for people that they've helped and gone out of their way for. It's terrible when the one that should be your friend becomes your enemy. It's a very painful kind of a wounded spirit. And it happens all the time. It's happened to me a few times. When a soul, I've been broken several times, but this particular wounded spirit with close friends happened to me a few times, and it was bad. When a soul is under a deep and terrible sense of sin, when someone has provoked God's beautiful grace, and we've all done it to him, like Peter, and when he has betrayed God and his closest friends, a person in such a condition will have a wounded spirit such as nobody can bear. This isn't really an exact story pertaining to the rest of the theme, but it's coming to my mind now, so I'll share it. It was, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 15, maybe 10, I don't know. But anyway, I was living in Maryland, and I had a dear friend who was the head of the women in not only my local assembly, but our worldwide church. So she was being contacted often from pastors' wives overseas and other women, and she was very busy. And we lived about an hour and a half away from the Amish country in Pennsylvania, where they have the Sight and Sound Theater, where they put on those productions of Bible stories like Daniel and Noah's Ark and Abraham and Sarah, I think, and probably more by now. This was quite a few years ago. So I treated her to a movie there, not a movie, the production, because all live animals were used and everything like that. So we spent the day together, and I drove her there, and we enjoyed the production, and then we went back home to Maryland, and I treated her to a nice dinner. And it was just a perfect day, because I just felt these women from all parts of the world are after her all the time for advice and whatnot, and here I had her all to myself for the whole day. That was like beyond for me. So anyway, the day went perfectly, And we even had a light, like a cracker or sandwich lunch outside of the theater after we had bought our tickets and watched the production. And that evening, when we were back in Maryland, we went to, I think it was Chili's, and we had a nice supper. And we were probably 3/4 done with our supper when all of a sudden I said the stupidest thing out of my mouth that could have been a little judgmental towards somebody, one of those things. I don't even remember what it was. So anyway, I had a shroud of guilt come over me, and I knew immediately that it spoiled the whole day. She was very gracious. She never corrected me, but she knew. I could see that she knew. And I just went through the motions for the rest of the dinner and when I took her home. And I think I laid awake all night long. The guilt was just overbearing. And it went on like that for the next 3 days. I just couldn't forgive myself. And I couldn't even pray, and I couldn't even fellowship with God. And if there was a church service, I probably didn't even go to it. I was that far down in my spirit. So anyway, on the third day, God led me to the Bible, and I opened it up, and I don't remember what book it was in, but the chapter started with one word repeated 4 times. The word was return. And I read, return, 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 return. And what the Spirit of God was saying to me was, return to me, BJ. Return to me. He missed my fellowship so very much. He missed my fellowship even more than I missed his fellowship. And he was so compassionate to me because I had a long face. I was breaking his heart. And it was so powerful because I had realized that the word return is used in the Bible twice together, like return, return. And there's a possibility that it's mentioned 3 times together, return, return, returned, although I'm not sure about the 3 times. But it's no place in the Bible, I don't think, is there any time that one word is mentioned 4 times together like that. I mean, God's used the word like woman, woman, something like that, but never 4 times in a row. So I knew that he really wanted my attention. So I asked him for help. I apologized to him for grieving him that way, and I asked him for his help. And I just had to forgive myself. I said, help me to forgive myself, Lord. So that's the kind of wound that we're talking about. There's so many different facets of it. Suppose our spirit is wounded. How is it to be healed? There is only one who can heal a wounded spirit, and that is God. We need to go to him for healing and to do our part by making the devil back off. And we have to do that on purpose. I mean, it's not abracadabra. We have to take a step forward and stand firm and push him out of our lives. I remember when my mom died, and it's kind of not an exact analogy, but you'll get it. When I was in the nursing home and she was in her last moments, and I was with her alone, my sister and brother-in-law were on their way to the hospital. And anytime something that bad happens, I have a tendency to go into hyperventilation. And I even said to the head nurse about an hour before that I had a tendency to lose my breath and all, the hyperventilating and all. So I asked her to just keep an eye on me. So it happened. I started to go into hyperventilating. It was a terrible thing to watch your mom die and nobody's there with you. And, I mean, I was a home health aide, and I've watched many people die, but never my own since my brother. But this was different than when my brother left. So it was not a good scene, and I was giving into it the way I had done in the past. And then I remembered that I had asked my pastor to pray specifically that I wouldn't go into hyperventilation. So as the breathlessness was attacking me, that thought came to me that my pastor had prayed specifically for me in that area. Was I going to believe in the prayer that he prayed for me, that God was going to answer his prayer? Or was I going to let the devil have his way? I could have passed out. Which one was I going to do? I had to make a choice. And I said, God, help me. Help me. Help me. I want to glorify you, and I want to use the authority that you gave to me. When you died at Calvary, you gave me that authority. You invested your life in me to have the authority. For all of us, Christians. So I did. I asked him for his help to strengthen me, and I started taking little baby breaths at a time, until I was breathing normally. And I came out of it. Now, if I had not chosen to do that, I would have probably grabbed the button that the patient presses to call the nurse and passed out while the nurse was on her way there or something. Something terrible would have happened. But it didn't, because I chose not to let it happen. And God was faithful in helping me to do that. If your wounded spirit should not get peace at once, so this is, if you lose somebody, and people have, because I put this on Facebook this morning, and or yesterday, and I've gotten a bunch of responses. One lady's words were exactly like this. I was that lady in the black dress that I just read to you. She says, I was that lady in the black dress, and others similar emails and messages. Okay, so if you are that lady in the black dress, and you can't get peace to stop grieving and stop wearing black, try repenting of inadvertent sin that may be in your life that you're not aware of. Try repenting of those sins. Try changing any unbecoming attributes that you may be expressing to others. Look within yourself. Also, study your Bible more. Talk to the Lord more during the day. Ask him, not to mention, stay active in church and everything else that you do as a Christian, Bible studies. Ask him to cover you with the precious blood of Jesus and with the fire of the Holy Spirit. And ask him to put the armor of God on you, according to Ephesians 6:11-19. That armor is imperative. We need to do that whether we lose somebody or not. The armor on us every day. God has sympathy for you, and Jesus has divine compassion for you because of what you are going through. He lives inside of you, so he feels your bitterness. How could he not? We need to remind ourselves that God will treat our brokenness in the same way that we would treat our own child's brokenness. His grace is greater than your brokenness. You have the free will to accept his peace and his healing, and God is not going to violate your free will. He doesn't do that. He does not do that. I like to read another broken spirit verse. Psalm 51:17. I forgot to save that a place for that one. Hold on, 51:17. Excuse me, Psalm 51:17. Hold on a minute. It's a good one. It's a good verse. My sacrifice to God is a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart, broken down with sorrow for sin and humbly and thoroughly penitent. Such, O God, you will not despise. Isn't that a beautiful verse? The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Oh, he does. He is and he does. He's near, very near to you. And he saves the crushed in spirit. If you are crushed in your spirit, he will save you from that condition. Just call upon him. He will. Here's another one. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Isn't that just the kind of God is. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. If your kid falls or your grandkid falls and scrapes his knee, what are you going to run for? You're going to go to the medicine cabinet and grab a Band-Aid, right? And you're going to bind up his boo-boo. So God binds up our wounds. Psalm 55:22. Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. And this I call my life verse, because my birthday is November 28th, 11/28. So I call this my life verse from Matthew 11:28. Come, and it's not the familiar version, I don't think. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Well, that part is in all translations. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Or maybe it is from the King James, I don't know. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Isn't that beautiful? And that's what he says. Come to me and find rest for your weary souls. Remember, Jesus was broken and spilled out for us. He certainly was. Broken. He was a broken man. His body was broken. And inside he was hurting. He was hurting. And he was spilled out. His blood was spilled out for us. His sacrificial act was not in vain. Because it didn't stop there. He rose and ascended into heaven. And many wonderful things have happened in Christianity all through the years since then. So no, it was not in vain, and neither will your brokenness be in vain. If you're going through something now and you have a broken spirit and it seems like the end of the world, you will come out of it. He will help you to come out of it, but you're trusting Him. And you know what? Your brokenness this time in your life, it will not be in vain. You will use it someday to help other people, and it will give you strength. It will build character in you. So trust me, it's not going to be in vain. So I do hope that many of you who have heavy hearts will ponder on these words today. And if you don't have a heavy heart, I pray that many of you listeners who know somebody else who has a heavy heart will pass these words on to them. And let me just say a prayer. Father, just help those with heavy hearts. I agree with you. Matthew 18, which you agreed, I am there and I hear and I will answer. So I agree with you that you're going to get better. Thanks for watching. God bless you and God bless yours. God keep you and God keep yours. Bye-bye for now. Till next time.